can try and win championships, and that's what it's all about. When you look from the outside and you watch this team, I know we're going to have a real good, solid hockey team this year.
Welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Eric Wilson, and today we're going to be updating you all on Alexandar Georgiev. Now, last week we did a video about Georgiev talking about what should the Rangers do with him. You know, we looked at his contract. He's a restricted free agent this offseason, and it's very unlikely that the Rangers are going to keep him. So we took a look at, should they just let him walk? Should they try to trade him? What exactly should they do? We ultimately decided the best case scenario for the Rangers is to trade Alexandar Georgiev, and now we have an update about that trade market because apparently it's starting to heat up. There's a number of teams that have some interest in making Alexandar Georgiev potentially a starter in 2022, which is, of course, something that the Rangers cannot offer him and do not want to offer him. But we know that a backup goalie is one of the main priorities for the Rangers to find and to upgrade this offseason. But before that happens, they're going to have to move on from Alexandar Georgiev and see what they can get. So before we really dive into the meat and potatoes of this episode today, Eric, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's upsetting to think that a player like Georgiev will be leaving the New York Rangers, but it's one of those things that kind of has to happen at this point. As we covered on our last episode about him, we really don't have the cap space to keep a player like him around. But he's always wanted to be a starter, and there are a lot of teams out there that want to make him a starter. So at the end of the day, good for him, and I hope he gets that job wherever he goes.
Yeah, I think this could end up being a win-win for the Rangers and for Georgiev. The Rangers could end up pulling a draft pick out of this, and Georgiev could end up getting a starting position. So win-win there. But we want to discuss, some of the teams that are interested in him, kind of go over these rumors and reports, and then also discuss the draft pick that the Rangers could get in return for Georgiev. But first and foremost, let's go over his stats from this past season and throughout his career. In his career, he has played in 129 games. He has a 2.94 goals allowed average and a .908 save percentage. He played really well down the stretch last March. In March, he played really well with an 8-1 record, 2.45 goals allowed average, and a .909 save percentage. So he did start to play really well in March, filling in for Igor when Igor had a little bit of an injury, and that kind of started to generate some talk about Georgiev and him potentially becoming a starter for another team this upcoming season. And so that's kind of triggering what's going on right now with his trade market because there are teams that are interested. Now, again, as I mentioned, he's a restricted free agent, which means he's owed a $2.65 million qualifying offer. In my opinion, that's probably too much for the Rangers to spend. I don't think that they can really afford to give Georgiev $2.65 million. We did an episode last week. Go check it out on the channel where we looked at a couple of other options at the backup goalie position. A lot of them were worth $1.5 million or less. We think that's a more reasonable price range for the Rangers to be spending on their backup goalie. So make sure you go check out that video. We covered 3 different potential backup goalies that the Rangers could sign. But Eric, when you're taking a look at the potential $2.65 million qualifying offer, that's too much in your opinion, right?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Especially with all these other players that we need to sign coming up in the next couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. And that's definitely something to keep in mind when you're taking a look at a few of the other players that the Rangers are going to have to re-sign this offseason as well. They're going to have to decide between Ryan Strome, Andrew Kopp, and a couple other significant players on the roster who are unrestricted free agents. They need all the cap space that they can get in order to re-sign those guys. I don't think that Alexandar Georgiev should be a priority. Keep in mind, the Rangers have under $12 million in salary cap space to spend this offseason. Money's going to be a little bit tight, especially considering the level of talent that the Rangers are going to be signing and some of their unrestricted free agents. So it's going to be a little tough, and I just don't see an avenue where Alexandar Georgiev stays on this team. But like I said, that's why he's got a perfect opportunity to be traded and become a starter elsewhere. So if we take a look at this, all right, let's see. Colorado Avalanche and Edmonton Oilers were interested in his services at the trade deadline this past March, right after he had that really good run that I mentioned earlier. But Drury balked at moving him because he did not want to create a hole behind Shesterkin. Now, of course, we know a hole is going to form in that position anyway, and the Rangers are going to have to find a second line or a backup goalie. So at this time, Edmonton doesn't have picks in the second, third, or fourth round of 2022 draft. But would the Rangers be open to a pick in 2023 if the Edmonton Oilers are serious about trading Georgiev? Eric, what's your opinion on that? Do you need a 2022 draft pick in order to trade him? Or are you maybe okay with trading him for a 2023 draft pick?
I know I would be very okay with taking a 2023 or maybe even a 2024 pick as well. The one thing that we really don't need right now is draft picks. Like, yeah, we don't have that many of them, but we're not in like the mode where we're rebuilding. We have our young pieces already put into place. Now we just kind of got to wait for them to grow up and develop into star players. Years down the line, that's when we're going to need draft picks for when this core gets older and we're trying to rebuild the team again. So it's like, yeah, a 2022 would be nice to just add that on to this year's draft capital. But, if we have to take a 2023 or 2024, I wouldn't say it's the end of the world.
I agree, and keep that in mind because Edmonton is one of the teams that doesn't have any picks really in the 2022 draft that would be of value for Alexandar Georgiev, but they are interested in Alexandar Georgiev. They don't have picks in the second, third, or fourth round, so if they're going to make the trade for Georgiev, they're going to have to give up probably one of those middle round picks in 2023, which could potentially allow the Rangers to negotiate, say, hey, since this isn't a 2022 pick, maybe you just bump it up from a third to a second rounder or a fourth to a third rounder and you make it next year. That's possible. The Rangers could definitely negotiate that. But the reason that Georgiev makes sense for Edmonton is because the Oilers currently have a 40-year-old Mike Smith for one more season at $2.2 million as their goalie. So they're looking to find an upgrade, a younger, more long-term solution. And Georgiev is somebody that they've been interested in, and he makes a lot of sense. Now, another team that could also be interested in him is the New Jersey Devils. The Devils have been interested, rumored to be interested in Georgiev for a very long time. Eric, what would your thoughts be on Georgiev making the move from New York to New Jersey?
Um, you know, it's something we've seen before with some like former New York Rangers players ended up on the Devils. It's something that's like it would hurt a little bit, going from one of my favorite players to on one of our biggest rivals team. But at the end of the day, he is going to do what's best for his career, and if that's the team that'll give him the most money and give him that starting position, then I wouldn't blame him personally for uh, taking that offer. All I will say though is when he comes back into the Garden on the New Jersey Devils team, it wouldn't be the same.
Absolutely not. Might just have to boo Georgiev after that one, but we'll see. Of course, the Devils do have some picks in this year's draft, which could make their picks a little bit more valuable in the eyes of Chris Drury than the Oilers' picks. The Devils could potentially offer maybe a second or a third round in this year's draft, and that might make Drury bite. That might make him want to move Georgiev to New Jersey way more than he would all the way to Edmonton. So just keep that in mind. But of course, want to discuss the draft picks that the Rangers currently hold in the upcoming 2022 draft. Right now, they hold a second round pick, a fourth round pick, a fifth round pick, and a sixth round pick. So they're pretty short on draft capital, not a lot of picks there. But Eric, what are you hoping to gain in an Alexandar Georgiev trade in terms of draft capital?
Realistically, I would say like a third round pick would be the most fitting for a player like Georgiev, just like a pretty solid backup goaltender. A third round pick would be optimal. Somehow, maybe if Chris Drury can work his magic, he can listen to a bunch of offers and try to use that leverage to maybe argue for a second round pick. There's definitely no way he's going for a first, and a fourth is too low. So most likely a third, hopefully a second would be my estimate.
I think that's exactly right. I'm hoping for a second, but in all likelihood, it's probably going to be a third or maybe even a fourth round pick for Alexandar Georgiev. But again, it'll clear up some decent cap space for the Rangers. They don't have to extend that qualifying offer if they trade Georgiev. They can take that money, invest it elsewhere. There's some really important players that the Rangers are going to have to be signing as unrestricted free agents this offseason. But that pretty much wraps up all the topics on, or all this wraps up this topic about Georgiev. Eric, do you have any final thoughts about this topic?
Well, one final thought that I got to throw out there: if I, in a perfect world, Georgiev's going away no matter what, but I would hopefully send him to the Edmonton Oilers. I'm a big fan of the Oilers, not as much of the Rangers, obviously, but the one thing that's holding that team back from winning the cup at this point is a solid goaltender. Mike Smith is garbage, almost as garbage as Ryan Strome, and send him to the Oilers.
Solid. There you go. There's Eric's opinion. He's hoping to get a second or third round pick out of the Edmonton Oilers, probably in the 2023 NHL draft, to trade Alexandar Georgiev. And you know what? I'm hoping for the exact same thing. Let us know what you're hoping for down in the comment section below. Are you hoping to see Georgiev maybe even get the qualifying offer and get extended by the Rangers? Or do you want to see them trade him? If you want to see them trade him, What do you want the Rangers to get in return? Let us know in the comment section below. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video. Stay tuned because we'll have plenty of updates on Georgiev and all the other Rangers and pending free agents throughout the offseason, and definitely a lot of speculation videos about potential signings and trades that the Rangers should be making. Make sure to go check out some of our older episodes on this channel. Again, this is not the first time we've discussed Georgiev, and we've also discussed the likes of Andrew Kopp, Ryan Strome, JT Miller potentially in a trade. So make sure to go check all that out and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Ring the bell so you don't miss a video, and we'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.
He shoots. He's